explain that approach, answer your questions, and then meet with potential volunteers. We still need lots of help getting the word out, and there are lots of tasks to be done before we submit our application to the Board of Education. All right, so what is a classical education? Well, it's not about being old-fashioned. It's not a teaching technique. It is education that follows the trivium. What is the trivium? Well, the trivium has nothing to do with trivia. It's a way of organizing topics that roughly correspond to students' developmental stages. And it came from the Middle Ages and ancient Greece. For thousands of years of civilization, this was the way that we trained our young people. It consists of 3 phases: grammar, logic, and rhetoric. And so this is how it's set up. So the grammar stage is from kindergarten through 4th grade. We include kindergarten. If you want to be technical, it's actually 1st through 4th grade, but kindergarten has to go somewhere, so it goes to the grammar stage. And what the emphasis is at that stage is the fundamental knowledge and skills for the grammar of all subjects, not just English grammar. So, you know, your basic math facts, your basic facts about history, knowledge about how science works, the basics. And the logic phase comes next. And this is the time in kids' life when they are asking those why questions. They're trying to figure things out. It's not like in the grammar stage when the children tend to be these absorbers of all facts. Everything you say, it's like a sponge. They just kind of grab onto that factual information. And so the logic phase builds on the existing knowledge and skills, and it uses reasoning to learn more and more deeply understand your previous learning. And then the rhetoric phase, which is 9th through 12th grade, is the culmination of a classical education. You march with your knowledge and your logic, and then try to persuade others and argue for a point of view. So debate team and persuasive essays and things like that. And so what our school is going to address are the first 2 phases there, the grammar stage and the logic phase. We're not addressing the rhetoric phase. That's high school, and that was, to start a K-12 school is quite an undertaking. So we bit off K to 8 to start, and then if there's further interest on, obviously we would be open to opening additional grades later on. It's important to note that the emphasis at each phase is an emphasis. It's not a sole focus. So yes, you're acquiring a lot of knowledge in the grammar phase, but you're also learning skills and reasoning and self-expression. It's just the degree to which it's emphasized. So we try to emphasize the things that are most appropriate for children at those ages. And then, let's see here. I already said the green bullet in so many words. And so how we organize the topics, and this is really the segue into what we're going to talk about tonight. For the content section, like history, science, art, music, and literature, which is most of what we're talking about tonight, history provides the organizing structure. And so students actually take 2 chronological sweeps through history, 1st through 4th grade and then 5th through 8th grade. And this is an approach that is not used in any school, public or private, in Frederick County. So this is an option that would be unique within the county. For the skills subjects, math, reading, handwriting, and Spanish, there's a hierarchy of skills. So if you're teaching handwriting, you start out with the simple strokes. You're writing a vertical line, and then you're writing a horizontal line, and then you're combining those to make a T, right? And you circles and so on. You start with the elements, the simple forms first, and then you progress toward more complex forms. Well, that example of handwriting applies to math and reading and everything else. In reading, you're going to start out with the letters of the alphabet. What sounds do they make? Now you put them together, you have words. You put the words together, you have sentences, and you get into paragraphs and comprehending large works of text. So there's a hierarchy within each of these skills subjects that provides the organizing structure. So what's the sequence for content? So the history and humanity begins in 1st grade. Students will actually study ancient history, something that they're not going to get in any school, public or private, in Frederick County, is the study of ancient history in 1st grade. That's followed by the Middle Ages in 2nd grade, then the Renaissance, and then modern time. And then the science corresponds to the humanities. So when children are studying the ancient history, they're also going to study biology. Why? Because at the time the ancients were around, they knew about plants and animals. That was something they knew about. So there's a correlation between what was going on in the time period and the science that's emphasized. learning history and kind of getting a feel for that era. And then in second grade, they move on to the next. And because of the way it's structured here, kids will actually get 2 bites at this. So the first bite comes in the grammar stage, 1st through 4th grade. And then 5th through 8th grade is the logic stage, and they'll repeat the same sequence again. So the idea here is that in 5th grade, they're going to start over with ancient history and go through the sequence again, but with greater depth. They're going to be looking at original sources. They're going to be doing a lot more reading. In history, children will be read to in grades, kindergarten and second. More so than they would be in, say, 5th grade, where they're reading on their own and coming to their own conclusions and doing research. So the level of depth gets deeper as you go through the grades. All right. So that is, in a nutshell, what we